Environment meeting on Monday, the 21st of February. So no apologies for House. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? None. Next is public participation. We have two members of the public here.
Hello. I don't know some of you. A lot of you know me. I'm Neil Thomas. I was a councillor here for 4 years. I was the art consultant here, that's tree surgeon consultant here for 4 years, and I did the tree work here for 4 years on Outback Town Council. I've just come with a couple of concerns that I think you should know about. A few questions. I was recently called to a rather large fallen beech tree at Rockland's churchyard. I do quite a lot for churches. On arrival, I was told that my services were no longer required because Outback Town Council were coming to Rocklands to cut up a 15-ton beech tree. So, of course, all the wood vultures were already there with their little chainsaws, so I told them all to go home before they get killed. It was in the middle of a storm. And apparently the clerk had told the ground staff to stop what they were doing here and go to Rockland's church and cut up this beech tree. Now, not to say that's dangerous, well, that's obvious. But my problem, and this young man's problem, is that we are tree surgeons. That is our livelihood. When the council are cutting up trees for free, and we're trying to cut up trees, we have got no chance. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that we don't think that's fair, and in my opinion, that is just completely out of order. So why were Outback Town Council offering to go to another parish, use your groundsman and your equipment to cut up a tree for nothing, when it's obviously a professional job that we could have quoted for? So I'll leave it with you that this tree is at least 15 tons. The clerk kept saying that your guys are qualified. They are not. They have got simple chainsaw tickets. They are not qualified to cut up wind-blown trees. If they'd have gone there, they'd be dead. They'd have killed them. There's no doubt in my mind, unless you're highly skilled in that and have got all the relevant tickets, you have not got hope of cutting up a tree like that and surviving. It's just too dangerous. So I've said my piece. We've got a lot of work to do, so I'm going. But I've said what I've got to say. I'm not happy. I want to know why she offered to go to another parish and use Outback Town Council's equipment and personnel. And she's even put on the message that they will drop what they're doing during the day and go there and cut up the street. What? How? What is going on? Not to mention that she is your clerk put on there that your team are qualified. That's false information. The lady that I've been dealing with is highly upset. She was led to believe that Outback Town Council is going to come over to her and help her out with this tree that's resting on her gravestones, her family's gravestones. The clerk assured her that they're fully qualified to cut up 15-ton wind-blown trees, which they are not. So this woman has had false information given to her. She's had false hope given to her that this is going to get done for her for free. So she has now told all the tree surgeons, us that were quoting for this job, that we're not needed because she believes that Outback Town, because the clerk has messaged her and told her that she is that Outback Town Council are going to take care of it. On my arrival, I said, "Not a chance. You're not doing it." So when she's now told them that the tree's been assessed by a professional and they can't come, she's had a little bit of trouble. I'll leave that to Taylor. And I want to stress that it is not Amanda Butland who has brought this before you, it's me. I thought I need to come. She is getting a lot of stick about it. It was me that took the messages off my community hub. Now, this is another problem. How did she, you have to live in Rocklands, be on the Rocklands community hub. So how did the clerk get the information to go to there? Amanda put a shout out on there if anyone could help her move this tree off of the thing. She then rang me and contacted me. But why is the clerk not worrying about Attleborough? Why is she worrying about something that's going on 4 miles up the road out of her parish? This is what I want to know. So if you can find me the answers to those questions, I'll be very, very appreciative. We have got a lot of trees to cut up. We are not best pleased that we've had to come here tonight. We are, you can imagine what we are going through at the moment. We've had a very difficult couple of years as businesses. I would ask any of you in your businesses, if the council started offering your businesses for free, how would you feel? If you had to quote against a council that was offering your service that you do for a living for free, how would any of you cope with your businesses? That needs to stop. I'm not happy. It's, not to mention the danger factor of that tree is unbelievable. I've got £70,000 worth a year and all the tickets to cut it up, and even I'm worried about doing that if I ever get the job. But to send your guys over there is utter madness. Now, I can sort this out for you. I was an armed consultant here for 4 years, and I would have never let this happen. There's no way that your clerk would have offered services way and above what she could have done, free of charge, to any other surrounding parishes. I suggest that you need another armed consultant, because she's saying that she's talking about my team. I've sent forwarded all the emails to Taylor, and it was me that came in front of Taylor and asked Taylor to bring it to your attention, not Amanda Butler. Amanda Butler is a vulnerable young girl. She's got a lot of health issues. All she asked for was help to cut this tree that landed on her father's grave. She did not expect the clerk from Attleborough to contact her and offer them to go over and cut up the tree for her. But anyway, I'll leave it with you.
Neil, I have circulated something to members this afternoon and made them aware of your concerns.
Oh, good. Thank you very much.
And the chair and the chair personnel were both put into that bed. So
yeah, so I can leave it with you to sort it out. And I appreciate what comes of it. But when it comes to trees, there is so much involved. There is so much involved. A lot, and obviously your clerk thinks that you just need one chainsaw ticket and you can do it. It's not like that. With me and Matt trained for 10 years. We've done our courses and we've earned the right to go out and work as tree service. Your guys, I was on the committee that helped hire most of the guys, something we want to know. I know they haven't got what relevant things. In fact, when I was the art consultant here, I advised not to even put your guys on chainsaw tickets. It's a waste of time, because all they can literally do is cut a couple of logs. If anything needs felling, even if they haven't got the ticket, there's so much more involved. You should have a proper individual company come in and do it. You shouldn't let your groundsman do it either, really. And we had no problems. So I don't see why she's offering for you guys, them guys, to go over to Rockland. I'll wait for you guys to find the answers. But come on, we've got a lot of work to do. See ya.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
See you then.
Moving on. Has anyone got anything they'd like to add?
I've got somebody's been in touch with me about the parking. Can we talk about that?
I mean, we can, but I think that's
What it is
it's
it's a resident in Edenside It's obviously, I understand that Bretland has talked about putting meters into Edenside, but there's an added issue in Edenside with people parking down there, blocking people's driveways. There's a little cul-de-sac which gets totally blocked, and it's got to the point where some of the residents are putting out cones to stop people parking in there. And I just wonder if who we could talk to about that, whether highways or. Yeah.
We got a meeting with Bretlands last week about the trial and the inside and the parking strategy. And we've agreed to continue those discussions with Town Park and positively find a solution. So all that will be part of whatever you do, there's a causal effect. Find a solution, it causes problems somewhere else, and Bretland have recognised that. So that is under control, part of the discussion.
I have asked the residents to take photographs at various times of the day, just so that we can see, have evidence of the.
I think that will, like Councillor Charge said, that will form part of the consultation, is the legislation. Okay, so then moving on, we have item 5A, which is the minutes of the Environment Committee on the 15th of November 2021 for acceptance and approval. And that was a little while ago now, so I hope we can all remember what happened. And I would assume that everyone's read them in advance of the meeting. So do we have a proposal and second of their acceptance? Councillor Ellis,
we accept them.
and seconded by Councillor Lane. And then we have 5B, the minutes of the meeting on the 17th of January 2022. Again, do we have a proposal and seconder for their approval? Councillor Ellis
Proposal.
and Councillor Lane. Thank you. Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you, Andy. And the show of hands, please. And then we've got item 6, matters arising from the previous minutes for information. Andy, as lead, do we have an update on default?
Condition drawings, and so we're now probably ready to go there, tender to, I'm guessing the agreement.
It would be, so if they could be maybe circulated.
Yeah.
And then,
And circulate that document, so
yeah. Councillor Leslie.
It's good for council, if you could get those ready as part of the meeting pack for the full council meeting, and then we can propose something that would be useful. The environmental committee recommended a proposal that we go to full tender, and then we can have the consideration of the next full council meeting.
Yeah, have you got something? And show of hands. Perfect. Second one is the skate park. Do we have an update on the skate park? I know we had some representation at our last meeting, didn't we?
We've been seeking tenders for and proposals for the work that I've not heard anything for that.
Councillor Leslie.
We have had 2 quotations back as far as I'm aware already. Right. That was updated last week. I think we're chasing up the 3rd one ready for our the March meetings that we can have. So we can do that. There has been a little consideration given, and it's probably worth having a conversation about it because it impacts number 8 tonight a little bit.
The changing location.
Yeah, in light of some representation that we've received from a number of groups, actually, those who use the fields in the rec. There have been some concerns by those groups who use the fields. We had the one at last council meeting as well about the fund there and others. But the location of the new skate park would be problematic, and the knock-on effects would be to sports and activities on the main field and the condition of the fields. We've given it some thought, and we've had a look at the proposal that we've sent out. And I know it sounds like going backwards a step a little bit, but it may actually be a better solution. The existing skate park that we have is exactly the same length as Top Morden, which was the one that we put out as an indicative idea. It's exactly the same length, and it's only 4 meters narrower than the Top Morden one. And there's 6 or 7 meters between the skate park and the football fields as they stand at the moment. So there's room to put a footprint there, should we want to, that will have a minimal impact on some of these activities that are covered during the consultation period, if the council choose that as a more suited location. Advantages, it's closer to pathways and entrances we have. It also has hard standing ground, it's leveller, it has electric to site, it has a sound barrier around it, which would act in that place as well. It may tick a few more boxes. However, we need to look at another location for a sensory park or something like that.
Can I just say I was concerned how the ambulance was going to get through the gates. You know, when the workmen weren't there, across to the skateboard park, if it's a wet muddy field. I personally think it's much better with having the gate there just in case, and the access is easier for everybody coming off the hardcore already. So I would think that if provided you can get exactly what you wanted in there, or the pieces of equipment, I would agree with you going back to personally where you were, where it was.
The other advantage is there is a question mark over planning on
Yes.
the new site, because it would be effectively a renewal of the existing equipment, wouldn't require any planning permission. So it becomes a very straightforward process. I know speed was of the essence on this as well.
Yes.
There are a lot of benefits from us doing it, but I also recognise Councillor Smith and others have done a tremendous amount of hard work on the sensory park with fantastic ideas, which I love. But we may have to find a better location for that in light of the feedback we've had, because some of the bigger activities that we're seeing do as a council, like the fun fair and hosting such events, which really draw the community together, have real hang-ups about what we're trying to do.
I feel like this is part of the process. This is why we consult, is to get this feedback. So actually, I would just take it as a positive that we are getting the feedback that we're seeking from the consultation. I think that's a positive thing, personally.
If people are interested one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's good.
And that, you know, the consultation period is working. That's why we
It is.
consult on these things, is so that we can, I mean, make informed decisions and take these things into consideration that, you know, otherwise we might overlook. So
I would like to recommend, I don't know whether it's a motion or a recommendation at this stage, whatever you feel is appropriate as chair, but that we now make the existing skate park the primary location for the replacement skate park. I feel that that would fit better with it.
I think
I'll second that.
I think that is appropriate. We have to show hands, please, everybody. Next, we have the Dell access improvements, which I've been there a couple of times now. It's far better. I can't wait for the grass to grow back and, you know, actually look its full potential, because it is massive improvement.
Resident asked me to thank the council. She hadn't been to the Dell for 2 years. She didn't like it, the slope and everything. And when she went, she was really impressed.
Yeah.
And she said, you know, please thank the council.
It was a really
Yeah.
good job.
Yeah.
It's been really well executed. It does work. The gate is lower, so obviously, because I know a few residents beforehand said about the first gate, obviously your dog could get on the bottom of it. It's a small one. And I feel like we definitely made the right decision in keeping that gate and removing the second one, because I was there this week with my dogs, and a lady came and she went, "Are they friendly?" But one of my dogs barked. And she went, "Oh, okay," and walked away. So I feel like that gave her a good opportunity where she hadn't obviously come through the gate round the corner, and where she might have then been a little bit intimidated by the dog barking and telling her dog off. So no, I think that's a job well done. So many thanks to the team. Moving on, London Road consultation. Do we have an update on that? I was just curious, but obviously we discussed it a while ago, and then I haven't heard anything.
We haven't got updates yet.
No? No worries. And the recreation ground lighting, because obviously at the last meeting, we discussed exploring whether or not there'd need planning or, you know, any of the cost implications. Is there one that's in progress?
We kind of push that behind the skate park, because we thought we'd have to bring electric onto site anyway. And we didn't know whether to put it further from there while the work's on there. In light of this, it's kind of moved it a bit, so but we needed a decision on the siting first before we knew any additional electrical requirements. So with that decision, now we can progress that separately.
Thank you. And then next is the Queen Square bench maintenance, and it's this come up at the last meeting. And we said we were going to explore, you know, whether they're treated with a ointment or varnish or whatever. I just didn't know if we'd looked into that any further or had any thoughts on when any potential maintenance might be done. Councillor Wren.
The bench outside bit C, are we responsible for that one as well?
Outside the charity shop?
Yeah. We're not, because that needs some attention.
I don't think we are. No.
So, preferably,
Simply, possibly recommend most of the highways, I'm not sure to be honest. No, it's not.
yeah.
I suggest we hang fire for a couple of months on treating.
Wait till it's all.
Wait till the weather's better. Can't really do anything while it's wet.
Okay. That's fine. No,
They need to do it,
That's
obviously.
what the ground staff have reported back in.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
It's a bit more about trying.
you can tell me that not the sort of jobs that I do.
Yeah.
Item 7, correspondence. Have we had any yet? No. And then item 8, sensory play area, community garden. Report and recommendations for consideration. Councillor Smith, do you want to take the lead on this?
Yeah, I mean, I gathered some stuff together which I sent on, and somebody else also gathered some stuff together. I think the main thing is decide what we want from a sensory garden, where we want it to be. There has already been some reference made to sensory garden approach. I believe it's the one down Birch Drive, I think it is.
Yes, there is one on Birch Drive.
Yeah, I think calling it sensory garden is a little bit of an exaggeration.
I think it's a lot of an exaggeration.
If we want to do one, that would be a good place. Presumably that land, is that council land? I don't know.
It's town council. Right?
Yes, so that would make sense to me to be a suitable location.
Councillor Leslie.
We are looking at the one on Birch Road. It doesn't have any natural parking there. It's not particularly accessible as far as other than the immediate area. People don't know it's there. Yes, we could advertise it's there. If you get too many people there, parking is an issue. It would be walking to only. It is limited on its space. We may be, as a town council, looking to develop that into a revenue stream rather than something that continues in what it is because of its location. I think a sensory park, if we're going to expend money on it, needs to be more centrally located and more accessible. That's why the rec is the ideal place for it. It's just finding the location of the rec where that would be suitable to do so. And there's a lot of great ideas, Councillor Smith. You are to be commended on how much work you put into this.
I think the main thing is to decide what we want, because there's no fixed idea for a sensory garden. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
There is a really good one in Norwich, Grapes Hill Community Garden, which I've not got to go and look at yet.
Yeah.
But I'm going to, and I suggest if anybody else can get it to Norwich, have a look at that as well. That might provide some ideas.
I've already been and I have some pictures that I
Well
didn't circulate. What I was going to say is, I think from the meeting pack that you're looking at, which is some of the papers that I've prepared, obviously there's more of a play element. So I think when
I've
we're,
also got the ones.
oh, okay, it's just you were looking at the play stuff, and I know that was what I'd included. But I think if we first obviously look at our target audience, which from the meeting that we had last month, I think it was predominantly something aimed at children that the whole family could enjoy with them, so that it was inclusive for the whole family, siblings, parents, grandparents as well. I know when we'd had our walkabout, like Councillor Leslie just said, we obviously went to each of our open spaces, done a tour of every single one in town, and it did seem that the land at Birch Drive doesn't really have a great deal of potential because of its location. The recreation ground would seem ideal. And I do think that if not, somewhere maybe like Norfolk Drive, maybe, where there's quite a fair amount of green space there, where, you know, it is more residential with a broader range of age groups living nearby, because I think Birch Drive predominantly is the older generation, and I think you'd get a better mix located in Norfolk Drive, so that is an alternative potentially. I think could work.
As well, which is a big area you've got. Yeah, there are areas around, them. Probably need to identify the area, but one thing that's we need to consider, if we were having a chat with the councils which are operating these sensory play areas, is these are great equipment. How do they cope with vandalism? Because it is something that we encounter. I noticed a lot of this stuff is reasonably robust, but how will it cope? I would like some real feedback into the vandalism side of it.
One
Because
of the
it's an ongoing
companies,
cost.
one of the companies that I found, that's the, I think it's the first of the two pack. This one there is located in Colton Road, so only 15 minutes down the road, so I'm trying to find local people. And potentially, I don't know if they have a showroom, but we could ask them to maybe go and actually have a look and test the durability before looking too much further into it. Is it worth? I don't really want it to be anything, but I think if we don't have a site, we can say, is it worth deferring the site? Councillor Lane.
Yeah, I just want to say, reading through the pack, that yourself and Councillor Smith put together, one thing that's front of mind was a lot of these, I think it's brilliant, some of these things, a lot of them involve water, so you would need to have a water supply going to them. Obviously, there's unfortunately, the vandalism side to it as well. And I think our conversations to begin with were about a sensory play area. Obviously, a sensory garden is another wonderful thing to have, but that can be done in a different way. And the original idea was, because at that point we thought it would be located near to the current play area on the recreation ground, but brilliantly, that's a better use of that space to put the new skate park. But I think we need to be mindful of where we put it in that. I've lived in the town all my life practically, and where was you said? Norfolk Drive. It's the first time I've ever been there. You know, when I went on the walk about. So it needs to be really centrally located, and with a good footfall, where there's lots of people going around, where therefore you're less likely to get vandalism in an area where there's a high footfall of people going through. It's just the thought I had.
Is it not an opportunity to have a discussion with Bretland Homes England incorporating into phase 1 and 2? One, in terms of them paying for it, secondly, land allocation, and potentially that will probably be more central to the town than the existing town.
Well, I'll tell you what.
That's a really good idea.
That is a good idea. That is a good idea. And as yourself and Councillor Leslie are having those discussions, do you want to pitch that on behalf of our committee and feedback at the next meeting?
Very happy to. And it's not just the urban extension, but we have homes going up on London Road as well. With a good play area, it's something exciting to pitch and feedback. If the council are happy for us to do so.
Well, I think there's already a pretty good idea of the direction that we're wanting to take with it.
Can I just add to that? Sorry, it's back to what Councillor Smith said, or I think you, Councillor Taylor, in terms of, first of all, what is a sensory garden? What's the definition? What is it? And if it's a case of every new development that comes up, and let's look at Norwich Road, that's still up for grabs. Even if it's a small area that you can set aside, because they're trying to put in a play area that, frankly, personally, I think is not going to work very well. So I think, first of all, the starting point is at Town Council, what we think it is, what does it look like, what's the purpose, what does it do, what's the size from minimum to maximum. And then we have those discussions and you can get them all over the place rather than having a central one. So it becomes central part in a different sense. You have them all over the place, but it's back to what's the purpose of it? Because from my perspective, I see it one way, and there's parts of the community all over the place that need access to it, not just let's all travel to one area, and there it is. So I think a bit of thought process. I think we're on the right lines. I think it's there, but let's just step back. We've got so far. And sometimes it's good to pause and reflect. What is it we want to do? Okay, fine. How can we? I was going to say attack. That's the wrong word. Address this and incorporate it in future discussions and future developments in a informed and professional way, rather than this is a good idea. Where can we go? How can we do it? How much? Bang. Ooh, that didn't work. So I think we need a bit of a
I think
brief. I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there.
a small scale across the town, I do actually think would be beneficial, because I think as well, especially with obviously the report that I prepared, I was looking at it from a perspective where you're combining the element of obviously the sensory element with having fun and learning. So it was educational, it was fun, it was healthy. And I think if that was accessible across the town, for everybody, that would be a real benefit. Councillor Westby.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that anybody just said, but my slight concern is timing. The Sue will look in 2-3 years. Norwich Road will look. Can we do something in the meantime? On the basis that there's a whole series of them, almost as a network, or almost make a network of them. You visit one and go from one to another.
Councillor Lane.
2 points. One, I've read this report that we put together where it says benefits of gardening for children, etc., which I think sort of covers pretty much what we're looking at. But the concept of what Councillor Westby saying about it could be a couple of years off. Could we not look at our current areas that we've got and see if we could put sensory equipment into sensory play equipment, I would say, into those areas? And the second point I want to raise was about Birch Drive, in that it does look quite sorry and sad. And I know there is potential that we could do something with that, financially to make money, but it is used by the older generation who live around there. And it might be nice even if we could just tart it up a bit, it looks a bit neglected at the moment. And that might be nice for people who do use it, because it is used by some people around there.
Councillor, you live
Relatively.
Is it?
I haven't been down there for a while, so I'm going to say, but I will say that some of the plants in there were actually put in by the residents themselves. I'm trying to prove it.
Councillor Smith.
I was down there today and I've taken photos, which I sent in late, but it was quite depressing.
Do you know what? The only reason I just asked Councillor Wenham is because I've never seen a fountain in there. I don't know they're wrong, don't get me wrong, but if I ever have, I don't know, I just think it looks a bit sad. But
Well, there are a couple of residents that do use it.
yeah, I'm
Used to anyway.
Cool, but no, I did just wonder.
It might get used more if we publicised it and, and
if it was more inviting.
it was a bit tidier. It doesn't need money. I don't think we need money to be spent on it. I think just the planting in that, some of the stuff that's a bit overgrown.
If we publicise it and get it well used and then you take it away, what's going to happen then?
Yeah.
I think
the use of that specific site might be for another time, a different discussion, a different day.
I recommend that we take 2-pronged attack on this. See if any of the sensory equipment can be part of the refresh on the plants we're looking to do at the moment, when they've got to be all like public drive, etc. But also get a brief together so myself and Councillor Tyler, or whoever the council appoints, can have it ready as part of the discussion when developers are looking at what type of opportunity. So that's the 2 things we can do. The brief we can try and put together from something like this and bring it back for approval, which I'd recommend. But in the meantime, as and when the areas come up such as the road, which is the next one on there. As and when we are looking at these areas as a refresh, we look at elements of this sensory learning, inviting atmosphere that we can add to it.
I think that'd be very nice.
Okay. I'll second.
I was going to say, is that
Sounds like a
proposal?
proposal,
It wasn't,
doesn't it?
it wasn't
Yeah,
very precise, but I feel
Sorry,
like it
no,
was,
it's
it
general.
sounded like a proposal, so.
Yeah. Okay, it's a proposal.
And it's been seconded by councillor Tyra. Can we have a show of hands, please? Fantastic. We're going through this quick tonight, much quicker than I expected.
Keep going.
Yeah, item 9, bins and benches. So we had the benches included in our pack. And do you have any more notes about this? Because I had a meeting with Michelle and we went through this in quite a bit of depth. No, I'm going to have to try and remember now.
I think it was a picnic bench, so.
Yeah, so
Michelle favoured, I think, the coloured ones.
I did favour the coloured
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah,
I thought if we were going to put them at our play areas, they would look lovely.
yeah.
And there's not a huge jump in the price. I think from the plain black to those, there's a £25 difference.
Yeah.
So just something a bit jazzier. So that was my favourite. But it was actually the numbers that I was thinking, how many that we had discussed. I don't think that's been noted.
Mm.
Bear with me 2 seconds.
Okay, Chair, whilst you're looking for that.
Mhm.
Looking at the bench suppliers, because we've got A, B and C, they all seem to be very similar, maintenance free, come with warranties. And in that light, I think the best value and the best specification as well seems to be Supplier A.
Yes, who is my favourite ones, the jazzy ones. And they're made from recycled milk bottles, which makes
Yes,
me
they are.
super happy
I
as
can't
well.
open mine at all. I haven't got any of this because apparently.
They do come with a 25-year warranty, like some of them come with warranty, but I think that's as good as any of them. But the value for money that they offer there, the signs and everything else, seems to be the best. And they also are free delivery as well. So there aren't additional costs on those we see with it.
This is not something now. So basically, I'm going to have to try and do this from memory. Oh, sorry, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I just wondered if you found any picnic benches with wheelchair access. I couldn't spot any on these.
I didn't think there was actually to be fair. I don't think Michelle found them before access. So I know we discussed that.
I think if we're going to that expense, then it's worthwhile looking into making sure that they're accessible to all members of the community.
So it's layers.
Yeah.
The benches,
Yeah. Similar to the areas. I think that is a valid point.
Yeah.
Could not just go, okay, in principle, if Supplier A is the supplier,
Yeah,
Just go
and
back
just
and
see
say,
if we could maybe.
do they provide, can they, what's it look like?
Because we can get a couple of additional ones at a later date, that's not an issue, we can order some more. But I think the key sites that we've looked at for this, because again, this is obviously as a result of the walkabout, that we'd identified for these, was Signet, Lomond, and the Wreck, and also Norfolk Drive. There was 4 sites. So, no, we haven't actually at Gamers. They've got benches like this because I was down there with my dog and someone was playing chess at them and I thought, oh, how lovely.
Sorry,
That's enjoyable.
can I just condition that, and it does change our mindset, and quite rightly so, the plan of if we do provide these facilities, we need to make sure we can get to them. saying the siting of benches, something becomes important, or are we then going to put some hardcore pathways into, rather than
You mean for the
rather than some benches being on the periphery because it's necessary to put that and everything else in the middle. This is come back to, what we want that space for and how do we access it. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying there's a bit more thought in terms of if we are encouraging that inclusivity and everything else, how do we access those areas rather than just being grassed? That's not going to work well. So yes, but there's another step as well. If we want to do this properly and inclusive and everything else, there's a bit of thought process to go through. That applies to every bit of open space and future open space.
Councillor May.
My understanding was particularly at Lomond, that there was a hard path around it. But that was the site that we'd said we would put on. I can't remember about the other two, but I'm sure at those two sites there was.
So
Yeah.
I think at Lomond Road, we have discussed, because there's two entrances to the park, and they do have hard standing by them, was those two areas. So maybe one at each, so it was closer to the middle, so it wasn't near the housing, and it wouldn't upset the neighbours if it was fast. Norfolk Drive and Signet, I think it was to go on the grass area outside of the park, because this was a lot of all of our parks don't allow dogs. So if the parents or grandparents or whoever's looking after the children have dogs, they can't enter the park. So it'd be nice for them to have somewhere to sit outside the park. Additionally, we have benches, but we don't have any picnic benches or any facilities where you might be able to take your lunch or enjoy a longer stay. So I think that's why we were looking at these style of benches. I think if we are going to explore just like disabled access benches, that should be in addition to these. So I think that to say it would be appropriate to have, maybe one or two benches at each of those 4 locations, and then we can look at, maybe next month if we have quotes ready, or the following month after that, prices for wheelchair access in addition to these. I think, and also because, like Councillor Tyler's quite rightly said, we would have to further explore where they're going to be placed, whereas these ones we've already considered that really. We've done a site inspection and we've said, this would be an ideal location for this style of bench, whereas that's going to take a little bit more thought. So I think if we could have an agreement tonight on how many of these benches we would like, and then going forward, we can consider pricing and location of disabled access benches. Councillor Smith.
You mentioned London Road, but on the hard areas around the outside of the park. That's great. I think you said about putting more grass on the other ones. Are we going to run the risk of crashing the ground by putting picnic benches straight onto the grass? Or do they need to go onto some level hard standing?
We discussed this, Simon.
No, that's fine. Over to you.
We discussed this, and it would be a concrete pad or some sort of limestone area that they'd go onto, because of maintenance of the grass as well. It would be almost impossible to cut the grass efficiently and have that there. I think I have no problem with, in principle, saying yes, it's a supplier and we'll have up to a maximum of so many benches tonight. And I would like at the next stage to be at the next meeting, say, okay, we've got these on orders. Between now and the next meeting, where are we going to put them, and what do we need to do to place them? And bring that back to the meeting, and then you get to where you want to.
I think that seems appropriate.
Okay. Allows us to keep things ticking over, but also has an action plan to address the issue of where are we going to put them, and how easy would it be to add additional wheelchair access or disabled access to those sites, so they're not separate from everyone else's.
You can buy, as I've seen, benches where they're not just for wheelchairs. It's not a case of having a wheelchair bench, a standard bench. There are benches which incorporate all. So it's not like you've got to buy something that's completely separate. It could be something that incorporates all sections of society.
Councillor Boss and then councillor Westby.
Just a couple of things. I agree about the colours or what people sit on, but are those colours going to be stable? Are they going to be chipped? And a year's time, you've got lots of little pockets of rust coming through or what have you. 25 years is fine, but how long will the colours last? Just a practical thing. There was one other thing. We're talking about benches. They're fine for children, young mothers, those who get older, have back problems. Sitting down on the bench, you lie back and you lie back on the grass. I feel we need to look at diversity in this.
Councillor Westby and then councillor Leslie, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask a question about the colours. These are recycled plastics. They'll be a fruit colour. So not painted. It's a fruit colour.
Councillor Westby?
I'll give you a question, but what constitutes a disabled access bench? What form does it take? Is it sort of something where the planks on top of the bench or the tabletop extend so that you can get a wheelchair underneath?
I was thinking, sorry.
Exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah, thanks for
I mean, it might even be that supplier A have disabled access benches that
Yeah.
they just haven't.
that. No, I mean, that's
In
absolutely
the brochure.
sensible. Yeah.
It's not major difference.
No. And yeah, I mean, you don't want to read that, looks completely different either.
Is it worth, just so we can wrap this up neater, seeing supplier A do those benches, bring it back with the plan citing for next month, and then it can be approved or remanded.
Yeah, I think so. We got that one. I will second that. And the show of hands?
Have we actually discussed whether some benches should have backs on them, or has this been already disapproved or whatever?
Yes.
These benches we're talking about, councillor Buster, for the play area,
Yeah.
there are already seating there with back.
Yes.
So
This
there's
is
a-
an addition.
This is in addition. There are already the types of seats you're talking about, which are what we call the traditional ones with the back. So these are in addition.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, moving on, we've got item 10, the recreation ground youth facility for consideration. So I think we have discussed this.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, yeah, no, my bad, yes, bins next. Did anyone have a preference on the bins? I did, but upsetly because they're most expensive.
I did, but they've got the lead time, it's an issue.
Yeah,
I mean, if you look at the specification and the look at that, number 1 and number 2 offer a significant cost saving, but they're on a bit of a lead time. I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue because it's an additional service rather than one express. So to save some money, and because the looks are very similar, I would have gone for option number 2.
yeah. And to be fair, if they are the option, they have like a blank space on them, don't they, down here? I don't
They do,
know, my
yes.
eyesight's not very good, I'm supposed to wear glasses, but I don't. Only because I like that these ones did, especially at the moment, I don't know if we've all been active on social media and seen how upset everyone is about dog mess in our town everywhere all the time. It's all I see. And this one actually has a thing to say. It welcomes dog food. So that's the only reason I thought, yes, that'd be lovely. But we could maybe get a sign or a sticker or something to put
You
on
can
this
buy
one.
you can get stickers to stick on.
Yeah.
This bin accepts dog.
Yeah, and this
You can
one's
stick
got
them
this
on.
one's got a nice little space, but that would fit nicely.
Yeah.
So
Screen. The town logo on there and point out, you were talking a couple of quid each, we're not talking
Yeah.
huge amounts.
So, but yes, no, if that is your recommendation, I would quite happily second that unless anyone else has anything they'd like to add. So that is supplier 2. Do we want to add a number to this? Just, I know we said each of the entrance, 3 for decoy, is what we had said.
Yes.
3 for decoy, pending that they would agreement for emptying. So, but obviously that would be subject to whether or not we have them emptied. And then I think, I think we said each of the seating areas where we were planning to put the new picnic benches, there was a bin outside of the area. So I think that was an additional 4.
Yes.
So,
And just inside the rec, walking through to a place that we.
oh yeah, there's the bag bin, yeah, and the additional bin there.
If we say 210,
Yeah,
it's always having to have a confidence on because we do inherit the area, we do need to replace bins from time to time. They're having to have the stock from past experience. We
yeah.
have none of stock at the moment.
So there was also discussion about the cemetery, up by the cemetery.
Yes.
So up to
So
10
it's,
seats appropriate.
Yes.
And a show of hands for Britain, please.
Sorry, I'm going to say actually probably get more because we've noticed on walkabouts some of the bins are in a bit of a state. If we're ordering them now, why not order some more and replace some of these ones? The one down by the Dell, the one at the Drive, they're in need of replacements. If we order a few, they might even miss a discount.
So it might be discount.
Okay. So how many are proposing?
15.
Yeah, 15.
There we go, 15 it is.
And a show of hands for 15 bins. There we go.
We did use some often.
They don't look like.
Okay, now I'm not ahead of myself. Item 10, recreation ground youth facility. So again, just in informal discussions, this has been raised. And also, when it was discussed once during a snap meeting as a potential idea, depending on town council agreement, it was very well received from the police and also by the contextual safeguarding group. So the idea is, or was, that, I don't know what it's called, I hate to call it Dead Man's Hut, because that's all I've bit of a name. I don't know what else it's called. The brick building on the recreation ground, convert it into a very simplistic youth facility, maybe just, with some lino and a sofa in it or something. I don't know, just somewhere where the kids can go, they're out of shelter, that they're not in the bus shelter, or in the K's alleyway. I think it would be beneficial. I think they've got nothing, and to give them something would be very nice. Does anyone have anything to say? That's the time.
I think it's a great idea because when we had to walk around the skate park originally, some of the kids were down there, and what came out was some kind of shelter. So, I'm thinking if we're going to site the skate park where it is at the moment, we need to be looking at some kind of shelter anyway, regardless. It can be a simple timber open. Let's think about security and everything else.
be taken to the schools and groups. You've got YAB and others that would like to be involved in this. Why not make it a project and give somebody a project lead to communicate and liaise with them and say, look, we're thinking of doing something here. Hopefully we'll have plans for skate park and improve very shortly. We can take those to them and say, listen, whereabouts, what do you think it ought to look like? We've got this hut here, what do you think? And get them involved in the making of that. And then once we get their sort of indicative ideas of what they want, then we can get the brief together and get some idea of costs for implementation. We just need somebody who's able to take this on.
Well, I have a couple of suggestions.
Yeah.
So my first suggestion, which Andy always gets lumbered for these kind of things,
Yeah.
is just because he knows what he's doing, he would be a key person, I think, to be actively involved in it. And the second thing I was going to say is, in 2 days' time, I have a Zoom meeting with the contextual safeguarding. So from that perspective, I don't mind also being actively involved. And I was going to say, would you like to share? Unless anyone else would like to put themselves forward.
I don't say yes.
Yeah.
I just think, yeah, I feel like actually to share the load might be nice as well.
I think the key thing is keep it simple. There are simple designs. That's all they want when we spoke to them on the rec. It's just simple.
It is.
So you can give them ideas, and just what you're asking for is, can you improve it? Can you elaborate on it? Is there anything missing? Rather than giving them a blank bit of paper, because they'll just go, what can I do? How much money can I get? You know, so I think the idea is come up with sketch designs, these are locations. This is what it's there for. What do you think?
Yeah.
So keep it a simple process, but invite them. And if no one comes on board, then at least you've got something, and it's a separate project. But as Councillor Leslie says, you know, skate parks happen full stop. This is over and above that, what we want to see. And then use it as to, well, where else can it go? Moments on the road, everything else. So it's, you know, what's the added value of doing this process? That's the question.
Councillor Leslie, what you said sounded like a proposal. Do you want to type it up and reword it? Oh, sorry, that's
Not necessarily retracted my then. I would like to be involved, yes. And then you're going to be tied up with the baby, so I might have more spare time. But yes, I would
It
like to
may
be involved.
take a number of councillors with expertise. We've got people here who are on governors, schools who've got connections there. A member of YAB.
Yeah.
The technical expertise in Andy. You know, we've got a multitude. I mean, we've got Andy Smith who's involved with schools as well, and knows how to work with schools on doing these sort of projects. You know, and we can just plug people in and find time to do this. But it's nice to have somebody who's driving it. So my proposal is that we appoint a councillor to drive this project, lead this project forward, and it's a consultation with local youth groups, other interested groups, as coming up with an indicative plan, which we can then cost up and go to tender.
That's good. Right, do we have a seconder for the proposal? Councillor May seconded that, and let's show hands of approval. And a lead. I mean, unless we just want to go with the fact that we're going to share the responsibility between the few of us. Myself, Councillor Westby and Councillor Dale, we volunteered. So we'll just do a little working party.
Don't get each of them to add.
Yeah, we will contribute. Okay. Next. Queen's Road allotments. So A is use of the first site. So again, I don't know how many of us were still present for this part of the walkabout. But when you go into our Queen's Road allotments, the first site at the moment, it's used as a dump for cemetery spoil. It's very untidy. And also, it's not been used as an allotment for, I want to say, probably about 3 years. 4 years.
Doesn't work in the sun, nothing grows.
Yeah, so I know the tenant that actually had it
Yeah.
last rented out, she had a nightmare with it. So it wasn't practical as an allotment plot, but also it is a bit of a mess. So I think we need to think about what we're gonna, if we're gonna level it, if we're gonna try and let it, if we're gonna put something there, but also if it was a designated spot after 7 years, you're supposed to ask the Secretary of State to never use it as an
That is true. I would like to lose this allotment, but we could have it as a community allotment for composting, which goes on to 11B.
Yes.
And I would support that recommendation, absolutely.
Okay, so use of the first plot, community composting. And well, that goes with the second one as well. That is A and B all rounded up into one.
I think quite close together as well as what we need to do and how we go through this. There's a process. We've got some great markers on this, on what we do and how we do it, even down to the insurance and everything else and how we improve the scheme. Yeah.
I just think at the moment, it seems a bit silly that, you know, I know a lot of our like park roads and stuff, sometimes it goes in the skip at the allotment. And I just think the skip, we're paying for someone to take it away. This either could be used by ourselves. So, you know, like we could use it, the community could use it, or we could be paid for it. And I literally just think, I just think it's great. I'm very positive about this. Okay, so is that proposal? I thought you make normal proposals.
Sorry, because someone was.
Phil, do you want to make the proposal?
Sorry.
You're just
I
going to look
propose
at
that we use the first plot for a community allotment, which we need to turn as an allotment for the use of a community composting site.
I'll say.
Councillor Wayne.
I was going to second.
Okay.
Everyone will second.
And a show of hands. And did you get a seconder? Because everyone was fighting over it.
Yeah.
I think councillors can qualify councillors there.
Yeah, that's all right.
What was that for A?
It was for A and B. We tied them into
So
one.
we hide one.
Yeah, that was just, they were pulled together and the proposal was made. You're going to look so busy in the next set of minutes still. Item 12, land at Blackbourne Road for consideration. I included this because, again, this walkabout, I'm just trying to tick off all these things that we discussed while we were out and about. Many moons ago, this is Brecon Council land, by the way, Brecon
Yes, it
Council owns
is.
this land. For that reason, I actually probably won't do this one. But there was an offer to the town council many moons ago for us to acquire that land, and it was turned down. So I think one of the suggestions that come from the walkabout was seeing whether or not that land would still be on offer if we were interested in acquiring it. Because it is, I mean, there was a picture included in the pack, it's a huge piece of land, it's got a lot of potential. Councillor Dale.
It never went any further because we never gave a plan of what we were going to do with it. Brecon wanted a plan of what was going to go on it, how it was going to be used, and that was never given to them. So they, you know, sort of, yes, it has to have, if we want it, it has to have a plan of some sort, what it's going to be used for, what's going to be put on it, so that they can see the use of the land. And that's why it got turned down, well, why it went out last time, because that the council didn't feel follow it through.
I see. So I thought they were worried about the maintenance of it, but I still think it would be an asset. That's Leslie, look like you had something to say.
Oh, that's me thinking about the uses of the land.
And lovely assault course on that, by those trees, round those trees, sit wire,
There's-
ideal.
There is so much potential there, because it is such a massive piece of land.
We have a chronic shortage of green space within the town, and an even shorter use of space of what we have influence over. With so many plans going on elsewhere, I'm mindful this is taxpayers' money and things, but there's a good potential to use that land in a way that we can't use other pieces of land. So give us a bit more diversity. some sort of rustic assault course.
Assault course would be fantastic.
Councillor Smith.
When you said opportunity to acquire it, at cost or at no cost?
It was
No cost.
no cost or a pound or something ridiculous. It was
Yeah.
literally, it was either nominal or nothing. It was, yeah. But it was the responsibility of obviously taking that land. And I thought it was a maintenance thing, but obviously it was just that we didn't make any progress with the planning idea.
On the basis that there's no maintenance issue, I think it's a no-brainer.
The fact is, when we had walkabout, we looked at some of the smaller parcels that we have along the Cypress Road, and obviously areas like Birch Drive, where we just think there's such a lack of potential there. And it actually seemed almost sensible to say, well, actually, we're probably, especially with the little pieces on Cypress Road, we better dispose of these and not having to worry about that maintenance. And looking at getting something like this, that actually you'd get a lot of use out of
Invest in the income of the bits of the parcel. So,
into doing something.
Exactly. That was the idea, because we have really a few pieces of unused or rarely used or unusable pieces of land which require us to maintain. We are looking to expand the scope of our maintenance team and the way that we operate as a town council as we expand as a town. So that is a consideration. We will take more maintenance, but we are looking to expand that way and provide equipment to do it more adequately. But this is too good an opportunity not to use. So I propose that we, so I'm not going to propose anything. I suggest someone else propose. That we approach Breckland to examine the possibility of acquiring this as a town council and gauge what sort of usage they're asking of us and report back to the council.
I'll propose Phil's suggestion.
Do we have a second? Councillor Wenham. And a show of hands. Perfect. Next up, we have public participation. We have no members of the public. We have item 14, which is items for inclusion on the next agenda. Just because obviously, I feel like we all went on this walkabout, or not a newest member, sorry about that, Councillor Wenham. And actually, I don't think Councillor Buss did either.
I wasn't welcome.
Okay, no, that's fine. But the majority of us did attend a walkabout, and I think a lot of us obviously spend a considerable amount of time in our open spaces. So I just wanted to give everyone the opportunity really to put forward anything that they might like to be discussed. Councillor Lane.
Yeah, one of the things that we noted was the general maintenance of the gates into the recreation ground and the gates into the cemetery, both at the Queen's End Road and straight into that they could do a bit of TLC.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm not good at this maintenance thing, but like it was just said about the bench maintenance and the warmer weather, I think actually at the time, because the railings on Queen Square needed sanding and repainting as well, I think there was a suggestion by someone that knows more about this, and it was either Councillor Westby or Councillor Leslie, said wait until the summer months. So that's why I hadn't included it on the agenda yet. But I think the next meeting will be May. Things still a bit wet for April, but it could put it on the radar, just so it's on the to-do list going forward. Gives enough time. Yeah, so bit of maintenance, bit of painting or spray work, I don't know how it's done. Councillor Tyra.
There are a couple of requests on games.
That was full council. Yeah, that's been included in full council.
Okay, right.
The decision was made at full council about it, so it's returned to full council. You might recall it was discussed about the location of the long jump pit, and it was said on the first field, not the second field, and then come back with a proposal on the first field. That's going back to the council.
I think that was in our resolution in the minutes anyway, that it
Yeah,
goes back to the council
Yeah,
next
I just
time.
want to make sure.
So
that is included.
Yeah, yes.
anything else? No, okay, so we'll include the paint jobs on the next agenda, just for going forward. And then the time and date of next meeting, which should be, quick look, the 21st of March. Yeah, that's strange, isn't it? Yeah, so that'll be 7 o'clock on the 21st of March 2022. Meeting closed. Perfect. Dan, we did that such a good time. I'm so impressed. What was I saying?